Which center circle is bigger? It turns out they're both the same size. Just as there are well-known brain glitches that result in optical illusions, there are other well-known glitches that affect our mental processing. In the previous video, we discussed the confirmation bias. In essence, the brain tends to unconsciously gather evidence to support its existing views, while at the same time edit out the evidence that oppose its beliefs. The end result is that the brain will change its mind less often than expected when new information is made available. For example, this man believes in psychic readings. Watch how he and his medium react when his selective thinking is pointed out.
Currently one of Britain's most successful mediums, please welcome my next guest, Maureen Flynn. Do people remember accurately what takes place in a reading? Well, we have with us tonight Mr. Rod Beale. Mr. Beale, you're a satisfied client of Maureen's, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes.
She did a reading for you not too long ago, which I understand you think is a very good reading.
Yes, she did.
A few simple questions, if I may. First of all, how long did the thing last, first of all, the reading?
About half an hour.
About half an hour. How many names, pardon me, did she give you during that period of half an hour?
Probably half a dozen.
About half a dozen. And for your information, during your reading, Maureen Flynn tried these names, and they are on the tape of the reading that you're referring to. Alan, Alfred, Alice, Anne, Bill, Charlie, Colin, Connie, David, Derek, Eileen, Ellen, Flory, Frank, Fred, George, Jim, Joe, John, Karen, Catherine, Kevin, Lillian, Lisa, Liz, Lynn, Mark, Mary, May, Michael, Rob, Ron, Shirley, Sydney, Stanley, Sid, and Steve. That's 37 names, and she also asked you if you could connect with any name beginning with an N or an L, and you could not do so. Now, in the ones that were accepted, and you did accept 9 of the 37 that were given, these were some of the categories: a son, a lodger, a brother, a nephew, an adopted nephew, a grandfather, a fellow worker, a cousin, and the neighbor's dog. Now,
that's right out of context.
I'm sorry?
Right out of context.
We have a transcript of it right here, sir, and you may have that transcript to refer to it, and the names, I think, are outlined there, all 37 of them.
You can analyze anything. You can analyze Encyclopedia Britannica. Mr. Beale is here because he felt that what he actually got on that tape made sense to him, very much so.
You gave a good example in that tape there with the 37 names. People remember the ones that make sense and they forget the ones that don't make sense. But we're all left with different opinions. Some people feel like I do, well, there are so many names, we could all connect up to it, it means nothing to me. Other people, when it touches something important to them and stirs emotions in them, they feel genuine emotions that we shouldn't just wash away and say are worthless.
I began to notice a strong pattern as I studied religious history. Even after life supplies us with ample counter-evidence, we humans often choose to maintain our religious beliefs. For example, in the 17th century, Shabbatai Tzvi, a Jewish rabbi, claimed to be the Messiah. By 1665, most of Jewry believed him to be the long-awaited Jewish Messiah. Surprisingly, near the height of his influence, he apostatized and fell away from Judaism. In spite of this new information, many of his adherents still tenaciously clung to him as their Messiah, believing that his apostasy was part of some divine plan. He very well may have been the true Messiah, but it seemed obvious, at least to me, an outsider, that his adherents were unable to think critically or objectively about their beliefs. I wondered what caused such a strong bias. Later, in the 1820s, an American preacher named William Miller began the Adventist movement by teaching of an exciting new prophecy that Christ would return in 1844 and cleanse the earth with fire. Hundreds of thousands were converted, many of whom forfeited their property, possessions, and money in preparation for this date. They waited anxiously for October 22nd, 1844. This was the day they hoped to witness the return of the Son of God. The day came and went as any other, leaving many confused and disappointed. Strangely, rather than admitting that the date was an error, many Adventists, including the budding prophetess Ellen White, decided that the date was in fact correct, but she transformed the event into something more spiritual than earthly. To her, it had occurred in heaven, outside of testable reality. This event did not deter Ellen's group, but instead catapulted them forward, creating a worldwide religion now numbering nearly 20 million members, the Seventh-day Adventists. The Jehovah's Witnesses also known as the Watchtower Society, claimed to be God's mouthpiece, his channel of communication from heaven to earth. They predicted the end of the world in 1914, then in 1925, and again in 1975. It is interesting that their attendance has grown from thousands to now over 19 million in spite of these false prophecies. More recently, Harold Camping and his followers poured millions of dollars into warning the world that the end would come on May 21st, 2011.
Judgment Day, May 21st, 2011.
They're part of a nationwide movement that's put a date on Judgment Day.
Believe the world is ending May 21st and that it's their duty to warn the people.
It's going to be a worldwide earthquake.
Nothing you can do to prevent it. It's definitely going to happen.
What happened to Camping's beliefs when his prophecy failed?
Harold Camping is speaking out following his failed prophecy.
When the world didn't come to an end, he had to come up with some sort of explanation. And he says that the actual physical event will really happen on October 21st.
It will all happen on the last day, October 21, 2011. We aren't changing a date at all. We're just learning that we have to be looking at all of this a little bit more spiritual.
When October 21st, 2011 failed, many held strong to their beliefs and came up with another date. What stopped these people from seeing reality? What stopped them from thinking rationally? Leon Festinger, an American social psychologist, had the same question in the early 1950s. So he decided to closely study a group led by Dorothy Martin, a spiritual leader who had been receiving revelations indicating that the world would end in a great flood on December 21st, 1954. When the prophecy failed, the adherents not only maintained their beliefs, but began proselytizing more fervently. Festinger discovered that those who had more commitment to the group were less likely to change their minds when the prophecy failed. I began to realize that the more money, time, and emotion we sacrifice for our religions, the more biased we become. The more we have to lose, the harder it becomes to recognize that our religion could be wrong. This made me uncomfortable. I knew that if I wanted to help my brother, I would have to study the other side, but I knew that my bias would prevent me from taking the other side seriously. I knew I would only go through the motions of looking at the other side, with my heart in the wrong place. I felt motivated to learn the other side only to quickly excuse their arguments, so I could prove my brother wrong. I needed to find out how to be more genuine and curious, so I turned to the experts. Scientists must learn to be impartial so that their pet theories don't end up ruining their objectivity. After multiple governments invested billions on building the LHC to test whether the Higgs boson actually exists or not, it would be easy for scientists to hold a bias towards a positive outcome. Just months before the results could be known, these two scientists discussed their anticipation.
I'm really oscillating between thinking, yeah, it's clearly there, and then thinking, no, it's not going to turn up, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've decided not to have a strong opinion.
I've decided
to wait. I mean, in almost every way, I think it would be more exciting to prove that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it would be a longer-term, bigger result, I think. The negative result would have a longer-term, bigger impact, probably, because it would really put us back to the drawing board. On the other hand, in the short term, it'd be really kind of disappointing, because obviously a positive result is positive. You like to see that.
I don't think that's true at all. I think a negative result would be, even in the short term, would be much more exciting, because it's the opposite of what people expect, right? It's like, it would be a lot more fun.
I learned that good scientists were able to overcome their bias by enjoying a positive or negative outcome equally. They were just as excited to be proven wrong as they were right, because they valued truth and progress over being right. They knew that the quest for truth would not always be easy. It often demanded that we try a bunch of false assumptions before we find a single correct one, but the prize would be worth it. Light, truth, knowledge, and advancement for the human family.
There was an elderly professor in my department who had been passionately keen on a particular theory for, a number of years. And one day an American visiting researcher came and he completely and utterly disproved our old man's hypothesis. The old man strode to the front, shook his hand and said, "My dear fellow, I wish to thank you. I have been wrong these 15 years. And we all clapped our hands raw. That was the scientific ideal of somebody who had a lot invested, a lifetime almost invested into theory. And he was rejoicing that he had been shown wrong and that scientific truth had been advanced.
I finally got it. Being wrong was an important step towards truth, and my integrity demanded that I put down my defenses and investigate both sides sincerely. But there was still a part of me that felt uncomfortable diving into the unknown. I didn't want to be deceived. I didn't want to lose my testimony. But then I discovered something amazing, which I will share in the next video.